Sleepy Joe is white knuckling his presidency and reelection campaign, and now Democrats are left with a real problem on their hands. How do they rip it out from underneath him? Oh, don't get me wrong, they will. It's just going to be messier than they bargained for. The show starts now, but first, a word from our sponsor. Have you seen Chuck Norris lately? Well, he's still kicking butt and staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he looks more jacked than ever and seems to have more energy than guys half his age. And that's all thanks to Morning Kick, a revolutionary new daily drink from Roundhouse Provisions that combines ultra-potent greens like spirulina and kale with probiotics, prebiotics, collagen, and even ashwagandha. Just mix with water, stir, and enjoy. And unlike other green drinks out there, this one tastes exactly like strawberry lemonade and has hundreds of 5-star reviews. So go to chuckdefense.com/Tommy for up to 44% off your regular price order. Plus, every purchase is backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you want to experience smoother digestion, a boost of energy, and just overall healthier body, go to chuckdefense.com/Tommy today. So President Sleepy Joe wrote a letter. All right, let me start this over. Dr. Jill Biden wrote a letter to concerned Democrats, basically telling them to F themselves if they think they're going to push her, I mean her husband, off the throne and off the ticket. The letter itself was quite lengthy, and all the words were in perfect and understandable English, so I think it's pretty damn obvious Joe didn't write it. Hell, I'm not sure Joe could read it, let alone write it. And perhaps that's why, despite having all the audio and visual resources in the entire world, he had to jump on a phone call with his enablers over at MSNBC to quadruple down on his power grip.
Nobody said anything except me and the folks out there in the local, race. He said, I did nothing to stop Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In fact, he said, I think I encouraged Russia from going. I think he encouraged Russia going in. I mean, I'm reading from the list of lies. First of all, he was made up quotes, suckers and losers. I was with he called the Americans in the cemeteries from World War I suckers and losers. And so this guy's going to have to start to answer for what he did.
Okay. It's much easier to read off your note cards or straight from a script over the phone, even though he still struggled with that. I'm sure Jill was right next to him, ready to punish him if he messed up like a bad little boy, because she's flat out evil. But speaking of note cards, Axios sat on this one for a few years, but they finally put out a report complete with photos disgruntled White House aides 1,000% leaked, detailing how detailed Joe's handlers have to be in order to get him to walk and talk and live like a semi-functional human being. They have to instruct the most powerful man on earth how to walk to a podium in the middle of a stage as if there are hundreds of podiums on the stage and they need to be sure he picks the right one. I mean, who the hell knows? Maybe Joe thinks there are more podiums, or maybe he sees dead people. It wouldn't be the first time. But it's all just so embarrassing. This is the goodest job the Democrats could do?
If you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
The goodest job. The Democrats are in a tight spot, no doubt. They got to figure out how to make Joe go away quietly, and he's going to kick and scream the whole way, maybe even bite. They'll still do it because Democrats are cutthroat. They're going to get rid of him. And then phase 2 will be this one.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been,
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What we can see, what we believe can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
Who we can be unburdened by who we have been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
Where we can be unburdened by where we have been and unburdened by where we are right now.
We actually had to cut that down because there's more. But the Democrats are about to be really burdened by what has been, and her name is Kamala. Good luck. It couldn't happen to a more deserving political party. But I want to bring in an opposing voice to add to this conversation because that's only fair. So joining me now is Democratic Strategist, and she's got a lot of strategizing to do, Allie Sammarco. Allie, thank you for being a good sport, and thank you for being with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so we got to just jump right in. I know that this cannot be easy on the Democrat side. I don't envy your position as a strategist because, quite frankly, things are just not great over there. But we know yesterday, President Joe Biden sent out that letter basically saying he's not going to go away. And any assertion that he is going to go away or any efforts to get him out of the way would be an assault to democracy. What do you think of that letter? And do you think that's going to do the trick over on the Democrat side?
I mean, look, we know Joe Biden is old. That's not news. Donald Trump is also old. They're only about 3 years apart. So at the end of the day, I'm going to support Joe Biden as the nominee. He has trusted, or he has the trusted leadership of many Americans, and he's been in politics for a long time, almost 50 years, far longer than Donald Trump ever has. And so he's made it very clear that he's running. So I think the naysayers need to step down, and I understand their concerns that he is on the older side and he isn't as verbally as sharp as he maybe was in the past. And that's normal, I think, at 81 years old. So I understand that, but I do think it's time for them to stand back and to support our nominee because he's made extremely clear that he is running and he's in it to win it. And he's going to beat Donald Trump in November.
What happens if the donors really start backing out? There's been some notable ones that have already vowed that they're not going to give any more money, not only to Joe Biden, but to any Democrat until Joe steps down from this reelection bid. So if the money dries up and more people and more big donors start pulling their money, what is the DNC, what is the Democrat Party going to do in that case?
I mean, look, I don't think they're worried about that right now. I think Joe Biden has an extremely large war chest over, hundreds of millions of dollars sitting and waiting to be used for the next 3 months. So I don't think we're worried about that. And he's going to continue to raise money from hardworking Americans and the average person and not take money from big oil or big corporations that send a lot of money over to the opposing guy, Donald Trump, who has quite literally said, if you give me X amount of money, I will cut climate change regulations. So we're not worried about that.
But you don't disagree that there are big money donors that have donated to Joe Biden. I mean, to say that Donald Trump's getting big money donors and Joe Biden isn't when his fundraisers include George Clooney and Julia Roberts and name a celebrity there. He's got Robert De Niro out campaigning for him. So it's not exactly like the working class or the ones that are pumping the money in. It's a lot of big money donors. But if they aren't willing to give with Joe on the ticket, I mean, that's going to pose a real problem, whether they're bluffing or not. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But beyond the donor class, because I know a lot of Democrat talking points right now were that, the elites are wanting Joe out, but the average folks want Joe to stay in. But if you look at the polls, that's not really the case because the majority of your party doesn't want Joe to be your nominee. So how, when it comes convention time, do Democrats look at Democrat voters and say, we know you don't want him, but we're going to go with him anyway?
I mean, first of all, I don't necessarily trust every poll that comes out. Some of them are way off or they're very vastly different from each other. So I'm not too concerned looking at the polls. But I mean, it's fine that other people or some Democrats don't want Joe as the nominee and would prefer someone else. I think a lot of people on the Republican side could say the same thing about Donald Trump. But at the end of the day, they're going to back their candidate, and that's what we're going to do. And Joe Biden has beaten Donald Trump before, and I do think he can do it again this November. So I think we will all rally around each other at the end of the day, and by the convention, we'll all be on the same page again. But we are going through a tough period right now. I can't lie about that. But I do think it's going to be wrapped up pretty soon, and we'll all be on the same page and we'll be one team again by the convention.
It's going to be really interesting next couple of weeks. I've said it before. I just don't know how you put the genie back in the bottle with these Democrats coming out, elected Democrats coming out and saying that they want Joe to be replaced. I don't know how you then go and reverse course on that. That's a really tricky thing to do. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's going to put your party in a real difficult space. Do you think, after watching that ABC News interview, it was 22 minutes long with George Stephanopoulos, it was supposed to kind of do the damage control after the debate, but do you think Joe saying that he's kind of refusing to take an independent cognitive test or take a cognitive test at all, do you think that's problematic, and do you think that he should take one?
I don't think he said that. I watched the interview and he said he's taken a cognitive test every day. He's also been evaluated and had a physical pretty frequently
And
as
Allie, you know
the
that
president.
saying that you take one every day because you get up and go to work, that's not the same thing as taking an actual cognitive test. You agree?
Look, I think he's being evaluated by, the highest level of health providers that there are. And so I'm not worried about that. I mean, Donald Trump said that he took a cognitive test and could repeat family, man, camera, TV, whatever. So I'm not sitting here worried about Joe Biden taking one of those cognitive tests. I think he's pretty capable of the job, and that's what he's been doing every single day. And so, no, I think he's being evaluated by the right people, and so I trust the White House.
Okay. I don't, but yesterday there was a really, really chaotic press conference. And I said it this morning on Fox and Friends first, but I actually feel for your press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, because she's in a difficult spot having to defend and answer for all the things going on. But, there were also some discussions about later in the week a big boy press conference. I don't know what a big boy press conference is, but I want to take a listen to this clip and then maybe you can explain it to me.
After that, the president will hold a press conference, I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it, and take some questions from y'all.
This week, President Biden will speak to national labor leaders of AFL-CIO, host the NATO summit to show the unprecedented strength of our alliance, hold a press conference, a big boy press conference, according to Justin Sink from Bloomberg.
What's a big boy press conference? And do you think that that might be a little insulting to the current president to refer to it as that?
I don't know where that term came from. I don't think it's, a technically helpful term at this point, given the concerns. But I think what they meant is that it's just a important press conference with a number of different high-level officials and CEOs. So I think that's what they meant by that. I don't think it was necessarily a helpful term to use, though, in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a soundbite that's going to be replayed by a lot of people on my side of the aisle. So I don't know if referring to it as big boy, it almost reminds me of after the debate when First Lady Jill Biden said, Joe, you did so good. You answered the questions. I mean, that to me was also very demeaning, and it's going to be problematic moving forward. But I have to ask you as well about the reports that Hunter Biden is kind of acting as gatekeeper to his father, even amongst close friends and allies, that Hunter Biden has been in official White House meetings. I know you're going to tell me that Donald Trump is a convicted felon, but Hunter Biden is also a convicted felon. He's got overseas business dealings. Do you think that's a wise move to put Hunter Biden in the middle of official meetings?
I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen any evidence of that being true. But yeah, I mean, Donald Trump, A, convicted felon, like you said, thank you for saying that. And then B, he had his kids in the middle of his official business in the White House as well. So I don't think there's any comparison there. Joe and Hunter have had a large degree of separation. Hunter has stayed out of the spotlight when it comes to his father's presidency.
You think so,
And
Allie? You
it's
really
the right.
think he stayed out of the
I really
spotlight?
do. Absolutely. I think it's the right wing that has brought him into the spotlight as a private citizen over and over and over again, which I think is highly inappropriate. But somehow there's this fascination with him. And for everyone who says that Donald Trump is being treated unfairly by the law, just look at Hunter Biden. He was also just convicted of felony gun charges.
Yeah, but he did that.
So,
But he did that.
yes.
With Donald Trump, they had to upgrade a misdemeanor that was outside of the statute of limitations, and they really had to rig something together to get a conviction there that is actually likely going to be overturned. The Supreme Court decision is going to have a lot to do with that, but on appeal anyway, likely to be overturned. But Hunter Biden lying on a federal gun form, I mean, that's not an upgraded misdemeanor and a statute of limitations. He just did that.
I don't think a jury of Donald Trump's peers decided that he did do that, and he did falsify his business records and pay payments to Stormy Daniels and then reimburse them as legal expenses, all to influence a national election. I mean, those are the facts that were presented. The prosecution made their case and a jury of his peers convicted him. So I don't think we can sit here and say that he didn't do something when by the law, he did do it. And I don't think it will be overturned or appealed, like you said.
Okay, well, we'll wait and see on that one. But I want to ask you something because I believe you're a former Republican. Am I getting that correct? So you have to explain to me. I see a lot of people go from liberal to conservative, Democrat to Republican. I haven't met a lot of folks that have gone Republican, Democrat. So you have to explain to me personally what made you make that choice.
That's actually pretty interesting to me because I don't know that I know a lot that went from Democrat to Republican, but I do know a lot that did what I did, which was leave the Republican Party when Donald Trump was elected. And I actually, unfortunately, voted for him in 2016. And so I knew he probably wasn't the best choice for president, but I put my concerns aside because I wanted to stay true to the party that I believed in. And I quickly realized that I was wrong. And the party did not actually embody the values that I personally believed in. Because they continue to support and enable Donald Trump throughout his presidency, no matter how many times he showed us that he was unfit for office. And no one was able to stand up to him except for a select few who now have joined the Democratic side and are fighting the fight alongside me. But after a good chunk of time, probably a couple of years into his presidency, I realized that I could no longer support the party. And I definitely would not be voting for Donald Trump again in 2020. And I'm very glad that I didn't. And I was going to do everything I could to make sure that Donald Trump was not reelected. And that's what I'm doing again here today.
So do you still hold some Republican ideals, though? As I get that you don't like Donald Trump, there are Republicans that don't like Donald Trump. I understand that perspective. You're not alone. Never Trumpers, I think, that group is called. But are there Republican principles that you still stand by in terms of securing the border, in terms of making sure only citizens are voting in any election, but especially federal election, in the pro-life movement? Are there still tenets of the Republican charter that you believe in?
I would say yes, but I think that my views of those ideals have changed because I realize that Republican policies just don't work. But when it comes to elections, of course, citizens are only legally allowed to vote, and we have good, hardworking people every day that volunteer for elections that make those elections possible. And so we do have very safe and secure elections for anybody who's concerned about that.
Why did Democrats come out against the SAVE Act? I'm going to be talking about it in my final thoughts, but why did the Democrats come out against the SAVE Act that would require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections? I know as a former Republican, that's got to be somewhat confusing to you.
Look, I mean, I think that we are committed as a party to election integrity and that we believe our elections are safe, secure, and free. And I think the right has waged a war on our elections and accused Democrats of numerous nefarious things that just honestly were not even coordinated enough as a party to pull off these massive stunts that they've accused us of. Like,
give yourself more credit.
Widespread voter
Give
fraud.
Yourself more credit. The unfettered drop boxes, which Wisconsin is now going to allow, overturn, a ruling that they already had, so they can just have drop boxes willy-nilly. I mean, drop boxes like many drop boxes as Burger Kings out there. But in terms of voting against the SAVE Act, even if you think elections are secure, don't you think proof of citizenship would be an important step to making sure that only American citizens are voting?
I mean, I think IDs are great to be presented when voting. I am a personal supporter of voter ID laws. So I think right there, that's proof of citizenship. But to answer your other question, some policies that I realized, or I guess ideals that I realized that the Republican Party and I did not agree on, were a lot of culture war issues that I felt like I agreed upon, and the Republican Party reflected my views, like family values, things of that nature. But I realized quickly that a lot of what the Republican Party does is say they support something without actually passing the legislation or taking the action to back it up. And I felt like the Democratic Party was pushing real policies that would actually support families in the United States, like lowering childcare costs or paid family medical leave, requiring paid family medical leave. So I felt like at the end of the day, incentivizing people to have families through good policies was actually more pro-family values than just saying, we support families, we support marriage.
Yeah.
Also, Republicans trying to end no-fault divorce. I mean, I don't think that's helpful to any family. So I think people have the right to make the decisions that they want, but we also need to incentivize them to create families, and doing that through good policy and legislation and not just saying that.
Well, I think Ivanka Trump actually spearheaded a lot of the things that you talked about when it comes to paid family leave and lowering child care costs. I know that that was something that was very important to her and her father's administration. But when it comes to the abortion issue, I'm just curious your take on that. You might be surprised to find out that for me, when it comes to the abortion question, I'm more on the pro-choice side. And that doesn't jive with a lot of, the conservative charter, if you will. I take a lot of heat for that. But I also think that the Democrat position on it is far too extreme. So where do you align on that as someone who's a former Republican? Very curious to see how you think that your new party is handling that issue.
I'd be curious to know where you actually align on that issue as well. But I think that women, generally, we should be able to trust women to make decisions about their own healthcare. And I think that people and women have the right to make those decisions that they see fit with the help of their doctor and their family and whatever God they believe in. And I think they should have the access to the care that they need. And I think a lot of times Republicans use a talking point like late-term abortion or abortion up until birth, but 90% of abortions are during the first trimester, and it's people that didn't know they were pregnant, found out they were pregnant, and received the abortion. And I think that women should have access to do that. I mean, getting pregnant, having a child is an extremely traumatic experience. I've done it myself. I've been through it. I almost died in the process of it. So I understand why women don't want to go through that. And then having children, again, it's another life-changing event. So I don't think that in any way white Republican men should be forcing women to make these decisions and go through this, especially young women. In some states, there's no exceptions for rape or incest or things like that. So I think that young women especially need to be protected. And I don't think the Republican Party is doing that. And I think that late-term abortion is just a scare tactic that Republicans are using to take extreme measures to prevent young women from getting the care that they need.
Okay. I don't disagree with you completely. I do disagree with you on some points there. I don't think that the late-term abortion thing is just a Republican talking point. I think that challenging the Democrat narrative on that and asking them how far is too far is a legitimate question. I am a limited government person, though, so I understand that aspect of what you're saying. Last question I have for you, and I know whenever I have a Democrat on, they don't like to answer this, but I'd like you to be as honest as you can. If Joe Biden does, in fact, by your party's own doing, step down, decide that he's not going to run for re-election, who is your choice to replace him?
Well, first of all, Joe Biden is running, so I will support Joe Biden. And I think if Joe Biden were to decide that he did not want to run, I think the next natural choice would be Kamala Harris, and I will support Kamala Harris full-heartedly. But if for some reason Kamala Harris did also not want to run, I think there's a number of great choices, governors that have garnered a lot of public support that would be great nominees, like Gavin Newsom or Andy Beshear of Kentucky, or there's so many.
Yeah,
Pete Buttigieg even would be a great option. So I'm open to just about anybody, but I think Joe Biden is our nominee, and that's who we're going to support.
Best of luck with that. I will just tell you it's funny because I've been doing this every Tuesday. I've been having liberals, Democrats on and having the same question posed. And it's so funny because everybody that says they support Joe, and I get that, that's what you've kind of got to say in a way. But everybody, after they get themselves out of the Kamala thing, because they kind of half-heartedly tell me that they will support Kamala, but then the next name that I always hear out of the Democrat or a liberal's mouth is California Governor Gavin Newsom. And I've been saying for nearly 2 years that that is going to be the nominee. So I just find that interesting that it seems to be on the tip of everybody's tongue once they get past the Joe and Kamala conversation. So we'll wait and see.
I do think he's largely popular in the state of California, and he's a very effective communicator, and he's out in the press a lot. So I think he has garnered a lot of attention and eyes on him, and I think he would be a great candidate for 2028. But as of right now, he does not have any plans to run. I don't think he'll be the nominee November. So I think Joe Biden is our guy, like I said.
All right. Well, best of luck to you guys with Joe Biden and to his health and whatever comes out of this week. It's going to be certainly an interesting time for you, but I really appreciate you being a good sport and answering all of my questions. I know that I say them sometimes in jest and in good fun, but I appreciate you for taking on the conversation. Thank you so much for being with me, and I really do hope to have you back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Allie. All right. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the Democrats aren't as worried about Joe as they should be because they're banking on millions of illegals voting. And that might sound like a conspiracy theory, except for the fact Democrats are literally fighting for that very thing. And it's time for final thoughts. So I've come to the conclusion that if Democrats or hacks in the media pass something off as a conspiracy theory, there's a pretty good chance it's not. And now you can add illegals voting to that very long list. Check this out. House Democrats and your failing president are united in their efforts to torpedo the SAVE Act, a Republican bill that would require voters to provide proof of citizenship to cast ballots in federal elections. Democrats are opposed to safeguarding elections from voter fraud. Well, knock me over with the world's lightest feather. Shoot, it's almost like the wide open border that's allowed millions and millions of illegals into our country was all part of the plan. I mean, that's pretty much the only reason Democrats would oppose proof of citizenship requirements for federal elections, right? You know, Democrats are great at developing BS excuses for their reasons for opposing common sense laws, which would make voter fraud much harder, but I'm not sure they can even come up with enough baloney to spin this one. And you know what, my friends? This is a very important thing to watch. In my opinion, the most important. Democrats are not happy they've got to deal with their Joe problem, but I tell you what, they probably prefer talking about their dementia candidate than all of the young women and innocent Americans being slaughtered and raped by their precious illegal aliens. They'd rather talk about Joe's failing brain than the millions of illegals their policies have allowed to bankrupt our communities and stress our already limited resources. It's important that we as conservatives, as Trump supporters, as patriots, do not take our eye off the ball here. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been consumed with talking about Joe and the bait and switch and the DNC plan, and that's important. I've been talking about it for years. But while all of that is happening, we are still being invaded by illegals, and Democrats are still working all the angles to get them voting. If you've got millions of illegals on your voter rolls, you can run a corpse and you can win. Does that sound like a conspiracy theory? Well, look around. This is not a test. This is real life, and it's coming at us real fast. Those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live again at 1 p.m. Eastern. Also, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. What's up, guys? Thank you for watching Tomi Lahren is Fearless. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you'll never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday and I hope you'll join me.